He didn't run, didn't raise his voice. But when they threw a 76-year-old war veteran face first onto scorching pavement in front of a gas station full of witnesses, what they didn't know was that he'd been working with the FBI for over a year, and now they were part of the case. Hi, everyone. Today we're starting with a story that doesn't feel like a story at all. It feels like a headline waiting to happen, a headline you hope never involves someone you love. Imagine this: a decorated war veteran, calm and respectful, is thrown face first onto hot concrete, his arms yanked behind him, his dignity scraped away in front of neighbors who've known him for decades. This isn't a far-off tragedy. It's a warning, a reminder that respect can vanish in an instant, and that injustice doesn't always wear a mask, it wears a badge. This could happen to anyone, even you. So before we dive into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching this right now, drop your city and time in the comments. I'd love to know where and when this reaches you. It was late on a Sunday afternoon in Carver, Mississippi. The kind of afternoon where sunlight lingers longer than it should, touching every cracked sidewalk and rusting porch swing with soft gold. Samuel Hargrove, known around town as Sam, was behind the wheel of his 2002 Chevy Impala. Clean, well-kept, no dents, no rust, just pride in motion. He had just left Hank's Hardware with a sack of nails, a tube of silicone caulk, and a quart of motor oil for the neighbor's lawnmower. The brown paper bag leaned against the passenger seat, and on his lap rested the arm of a field jacket that had been stitched, washed, and worn since Korea. A jacket that still held the smell of cedar from the closet he kept it in. Sam didn't drive fast. He didn't have to. At 76, he moved at a pace the world forgot how to respect. His left hand perched at 12 o'clock on the wheel, the right flicking on the signal before easing into a small side lot outside a no-name gas station. 2 pumps, a rusted ice machine, and a folding table where old men argued about baseball, God, and barbecue rubs. That's when the cruiser showed up. Black and white, low hum pulling in behind Sam's Impala, like a shadow with flashing lights. The first man out was Lieutenant Marcus Doyle, gray-haired, broad in the shoulders and bitter in the eyes. The second was Deputy Connor Briggs, clean-shaven and 20-something, fresh out of breath and perspective. They approached from both sides like Sam was already a suspect. He didn't reach for anything. He kept both hands on the wheel, glanced in the mirror, and rolled his window down. "You know why we stopped you?" Doyle asked without introduction. His tone wasn't curious. It was accusatory, like the question was just a setup. "No, sir," Sam replied evenly. "I wasn't speeding, and my lights are working." "License and registration," Briggs barked from the passenger side. Sam moved slow on purpose. He always did around uniforms. Years of living taught him fast movements made people nervous. He handed over the documents, including an old military ID that slipped out from behind his driver's license. Briggs snatched it and flipped it over. "Where'd you get this Army surplus?" "It's real," Sam said quietly. "Been mine a long time." Doyle squinted at the registration. "You sure this car's yours?" Sam turned his head slightly. "Yes, sir. Bought it from Rickman Auto back in '04. "You match a description," Doyle muttered, of what Sam asked, still composed. Doyle's eyes narrowed. "A stolen vehicle. Elderly, black male, older sedan, dark color." "That's all it takes now," Sam replied. There was no edge to his voice, just something heavier. Tired. "Step out of the car," Doyle ordered. Sam hesitated, not out of defiance but confusion. Briggs didn't wait. He flung open the door and reached in before Sam had unbuckled his seatbelt. "I said step out." The next moments didn't feel real, not to Sam, not to the folks sitting out front of the gas station. One man's chair scraped back. A woman dropped her phone. Sam's knees slammed against the pavement with a grunt, and his left hand was twisted behind him with no warning. The field jacket snagged on the doorframe, tearing slightly at the elbow. Doyle cuffed him hard and fast. Sam didn't fight, but that didn't stop them from treating him like he had. "What are y'all doing?" the woman near the pump shouted. "Ma'am, step back," Doyle snapped. "I'm filming this," she said, phone lifted and steady. Sam didn't raise his head. He stared at the concrete and the dusty toe of Briggs's boot. The cuffs cut deep. His breath remained steady, but his jaw clenched. Doyle leaned in close and muttered, "You old folks think the rules don't apply just 'cause you served." Sam looked up, eyes clear. "Respect isn't something you handcuff, By the time they shoved him into the back of the cruiser, the woman had already hit upload. The drive to the county station wasn't long, but it felt like miles. Neither deputy spoke. Sam watched the pine trees blur past the window, their trunks tall and tired like him. His wrists ached, his shoulders stung. But it wasn't the pain that settled in his chest. It was the knowing. The knowing that no uniform past or present could protect you from people who refused to see you. Inside the station, they didn't bring him through the front. They took him around back down a side hallway, out of sight from the lobby, as if they already knew they'd done wrong. In the holding room, they left him cuffed. Lieutenant Doyle stood in the corner with arms crossed. Deputy Briggs lingered by the door, avoiding Sam's gaze. Doyle tossed the military ID on the table. "So where'd you really get it? eBay?" Sam didn't flinch. "That barcode still works. Try it." "I don't care if it works," Doyle growled. "You don't talk back." "I served 30 years, Sam replied. "You don't get to talk down." The door creaked open. Another deputy stuck his head in. Sir, we've got an issue." "What kind of issue?" Doyle snapped. "Someone posted a video of the stop. It's getting traction fast." Briggs turned pale. "How many views?" "Over 20,000. And someone tagged the DOJ. Doyle's face flushed deep red. "Gas station on Main." "Yes, sir." Sam, still cuffed, exhaled once through his nose. Calm, resigned, but not defeated. Outside, the phone started ringing, and two unmarked black SUVs had just pulled into the lot. By the time agents Naomi Chavez and Glenn Rourke stepped out of their vehicles, the late afternoon sun had dipped just low enough to cast long shadows across the cracked asphalt of the Tallahatchie County Sheriff's Office. They weren't dressed for small-town diplomacy. Black suits, clipped walkie earpieces, and faces that didn't bother pretending they were just there for a visit. Chavez was the first to speak as she crossed the parking lot, holding up a leather case with the DOJ seal. "We're here to speak with Sheriff Lasky, Civil Rights Division." Inside, the sheriff's office smelled of old coffee and dust trapped in wood paneling. Sheriff Edward Lasky looked up from his cluttered desk, his half-loosened eyes already twitching from the chaos unraveling around him. He hadn't expected federal agents today or any day. His department didn't exactly get visitors from D.C., and certainly not for a routine traffic stop. "We received footage of an arrest made this afternoon involving a Mr. Samuel Hargrove." Chavez began, her tone clipped but respectful. "We'd like access to the arrest logs, cruiser dash cam footage, and any internal statements made since the incident." Lasky blinked. "Now hold on. Now, that footage is internal unless you've got Authority Agent Rourke cut in." He placed a folder on the desk, opening it to a page marked with an official seal. "Mr. Hargrove is a cooperating party in an active federal civil rights investigation spanning multiple counties, including this one." Lasky's throat bobbed. "He's a witness," Chavez clarified, "who was assisting our office in documenting patterns of racial targeting, use of force incidents, and inconsistencies in stop reports by officers under your command." Lasky stared at the paper, eyes scanning faster now. "You're saying he's with you?" "He volunteered," Rourke said. "Kept records, notes, badge numbers, times, dates. And he didn't tell anyone because that's how confidential informants work." Across the hallway, Lieutenant Doyle sat frozen in the break room, coffee halfway to his lips. Deputy Briggs had stepped outside for air, his hands visibly shaking. The station was too quiet. Even the sound of ringing phones had slowed, as if the building itself knew something was coming it couldn't outrun. Inside the holding cell, Sam remained seated on the cold bench, his wrists still cuffed behind him. He hadn't spoken since the initial questioning. His breathing was measured, his shoulders straight. The door opened and Chavez stepped in, followed by Rourke and a tight-lipped Lasky. "Mr. Hargrove," Chavez said gently, "we're with the Department of Justice. We apologize for your treatment, and we're here to get you out of those cuffs." Sam turned his head, giving the smallest nod of acknowledgement. "He didn't say I told you so." "He didn't need to." Rourke stepped forward and unlocked the cuffs himself. Sam rubbed his wrists slowly and exhaled. Chavez handed him a bottled water. "We've seen the video. We've reviewed the dash cam, but we'll need a full statement from you on record." "You up for that?" "I've been ready," Sam said simply. Word of the agent's arrival spread through the station faster than wildfire. Officers who once laughed freely now whispered in corners. Lieutenant Doyle was summoned to the back office. His walk was slower now. He didn't like the look on Rourke's face or the folder he kept flipping through like a knife being sharpened. When shown the cruiser cam footage, Doyle didn't say a word. It played in real time, the Impala pulling over the door, being yanked open, Sam's knees hitting pavement, the handcuffs snapping. No raised voices, no resistance. Just force. And one man who never even asked, "What did I do wrong?" "You understand what this shows?" Rourke asked. Doyle crossed his arms. "We were acting on a tip. Vehicle description matched." Rourke slid another page across the desk. "No stolen vehicle reported in a 30-mile radius that fits that car, that color, or that plate. You manufactured justification." Chavez leaned in. "You didn't just arrest someone unlawfully. You manhandled a federal witness." Doyle's bravado flickered for the first time. "We didn't know." "You didn't ask," Chavez replied. Deputy Briggs, when questioned later, didn't offer a defense. He sat in a windowless office, eyes down, and said, "I was told he matched the description. I didn't think to question it." "That's your job," Chavez said sharply, "to think." Outside the station, a crowd was forming. Nothing huge yet. A few familiar faces from the neighborhood. A pastor, a couple of veterans in faded caps. One man held a sign that read, "Respect ain't optional." Another had simply written, "His knees shouldn't hurt today." And there, standing near the edge of the sidewalk, was Paula Jenkins, the woman who filmed the whole thing. Still in her scrubs from the night shift, phone clutched tightly in hand, she looked like she hadn't slept. But her face was set, determined. Chavez recognized her immediately and stepped out to speak. "Miss Jenkins," Paula turned. "You here for Mr. Hargrove?" "We are," Chavez said. "Your video was the first step in making sure what happened doesn't disappear." "I didn't plan it," Paula said. "But I couldn't just stand there." "You did the right thing," Rourke added. "We'd like your full version of the events if you're willing to share it." Paula handed over her phone. "I saved the raw file. The online one's clipped. This one has everything." "Thank you," Chavez said, her voice gentler now. "You may have changed more than you know." That night, the story hit local news, then regional, then national. Footage of Sam face down on the pavement ran alongside the word veteran in every headline. "Another disturbing arrest in the South," read the ticker on MSNBC. "Vietnam-era vet mistaken for car thief slammed to ground," followed on CNN. At home, Sam didn't watch the news. He sat on his porch, the same mug of coffee he used every morning cooling beside him. He wasn't surprised by what had happened. What surprised him, if anything, was that this time, people were still talking about it the next day. He hadn't expected visitors, but just after 10 p.m., his porch light flicked on as Chavez and Rourke walked up the steps. Sam stood slowly. He didn't need explanations. He just nodded toward the two chairs by the porch rail. "We'll be filing formal charges," Chavez said. "Internal review, civil rights violations. It's already in motion." Sam didn't smile. "Not the first time it's happened, but maybe the last time it goes unpunished," Rourke said. Inside the station, Lieutenant Doyle was suspended. No badge, no gun, and a target on his record that wouldn't wash off. Deputy Briggs was placed under review, cooperative but complicit. Sheriff Lasky called a press conference the next morning. He stood in front of a podium with reporters firing questions before he opened his mouth. "There was a lapse in judgment," he began, "and we are cooperating fully with federal authorities." It wasn't enough. The town knew it. The crowd watching live knew it. Even the local news anchor who covered the story barely masked the skepticism in her voice. Meanwhile, outside the church on Maple Street, plans were already underway. The community wasn't just angry, they were awake now. And Samuel Hargrove, man of few words, man who fixed carburetors and balanced budgets in his head, was about to say something the whole country would hear. The church wasn't built for moments like this. It was old small with sagging hymnals and pews that creaked louder than the choir. But that Sunday morning, the place was packed, standing room only. Veterans in uniform, teachers with tight mouths, teenagers with their phones out recording every breath of what was about to happen. Samuel Hargrove didn't sit in the front row. He never did. He sat in the third beside a stained glass window depicting Moses parting the sea. When Pastor Ellison called his name, the room didn't erupt. It went still. He didn't rush to the podium, didn't straighten his shoulders for the cameras. He walked like a man who knew time, pain, and peace. When he reached the microphone, he didn't adjust it. He just looked out at everyone and began. "I've been pulled over more times than I can count," he said plainly. "Sometimes for a broken light that wasn't broken. Sometimes because they didn't believe the car was mine. But last Sunday, they didn't stop me because they were mistaken. They stopped me because they didn't care to know better." You could hear someone in the back whisper, "Amen. I served this country. I watched men I loved die overseas. I came back here, built a life, raised a family, paid taxes. And still after all that, when they looked at me, they didn't see a veteran. They saw a target." He paused, let the weight hang. "And it's not just me. It's every man who's had to keep receipts in his glove box just to prove ownership. Every woman who's had to teach her son how to speak calmly when his voice wants to yell. Every elder who fought for rights just to live long enough to watch them chipped away again." He took a slow breath. His hands never left the podium. "We keep hearing bad apples. But I'm telling you, it ain't just the apples. It's the whole damn orchard." A few gasps, some nods. No one moved. "I don't want revenge," Sam said. "I want recognition. I want my granddaughter to grow up in a town where her last name doesn't put her in danger. I want young men to stop dying quietly. I want old men to stop being thrown to the ground for having the nerve to age in public." He stepped back from the mic. That's all. No applause, just silence. Respectful. Heavy. Then one woman softly began humming, "We Shall Overcome." Others joined. The hum became a chorus. Sam sat back down, his jacket still folded in his lap, and stared at the floor as voices rose around him, not in protest, but in prayer. By that evening, the full video of his speech was uploaded by the choir director's grandson. It caught fire. Cable news anchors quoted him. Journalists cited him. Civil rights lawyers shared it on their platforms with captions like, "This is the voice America needs to hear." Sheriff Lasky tried to reframe the narrative, calling the arrest an isolated incident. But the release of the cruiser dash cam footage made that impossible. The footage showed everything: Sam's calm demeanor, the unnecessary force, the lack of any real warning. And then came the reports. Documents leaked to the press showed that Sam had been keeping a small, spiral-bound notebook for over a year, jotting down dates, times, and badge numbers tied to questionable stops. He hadn't just told stories. He had receipts. And those receipts pointed to a pattern. Over 70% of stops conducted by Doyle and Briggs in the past 9 months had involved black drivers, despite census data showing only a 22% black population in their patrol zone. The notebook also included sketches, diagrams of intersections where stops occurred, names of people Sam spoke with afterward. Some were neighbors, some were strangers who never got a ticket, just a warning and a bruised ego. When asked why he went to such lengths, Sam told Agent Chavez simply, "Because no one believed us when we said it out loud." But they might believe a notebook. A local news station interviewed one of the drivers Sam had spoken with, Lamar Jackson, a high school principal pulled over for weaving, despite dashboard footage showing no such thing. "He showed up a week later," Lamar said, "asked me if I remembered the badge number, told me I wasn't crazy, that someone was watching." Agent Rourke, when questioned by a reporter about the scope of the investigation, stated, "We've rarely encountered a civilian witness with this level of diligence, clarity, and accuracy." Mr. Hargrove didn't just witness injustice, he tracked it. By midweek, protesters had lined the county courthouse steps. Some held candles. Others held signs with Sam's face beside the words, "Still fighting." But it wasn't all symbolic. Real pressure was mounting. The state attorney general's office launched an independent probe. DOJ lawyers filed motions for access to personnel files, cruiser logs, and communications between officers. Local clergy petitioned for the removal of Sheriff Lasky. Inside the sheriff's department, tension boiled. Lieutenant Doyle had lawyered up. His attorney claimed the stop was standard procedure based on field descriptions, but no matching APB existed. Deputy Briggs had broken down in a closed-door meeting with federal agents, admitting that he had felt pressured to obey and uncertain how to push back. "I knew it felt wrong," he said, "but I didn't think I had a choice." "You always have a choice," Chavez had told him. Public pressure began pushing officials who had once stayed silent. The mayor of Carver issued a statement. The town council called for an emergency meeting. Veterans groups began organizing a march, inviting service members from across the state to show solidarity. Sam watched all of it from his living room. He didn't speak much, but his phone rang more than it had in years. Reporters, old Army friends, strangers who called just to say they believed him. One morning, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a photo of an older black man in uniform folded beside a note that read, "Thank you for standing up." My father never got the chance. Sam didn't cry. He rarely did. But he folded that letter and placed it in the same box where he kept his Army discharge papers. Then came the invitation, unexpected, handwritten and delivered by hand. A quiet ceremony was being planned by the Department of Justice. A private event. No cameras, no headlines, just recognition. A moment of truth in a room full of people who finally understood what dignity really meant. Sam didn't respond right away. He took a walk instead. Down Maple Street, past the gas station, past the folding chairs, past the spot where it all began. And as he stood there, hands in his pockets, he looked up at the rusted ice machine and whispered, "Let's finish this." The air on the day of the march was unusually crisp for late spring in Mississippi, as if the weather had taken a deep breath too. The streets of Carver, typically quiet on weekends, were lined with rows of folding chairs, flags, and people who'd never attended a protest in their life. What made this gathering different wasn't the signs or the slogans, it was the faces. Wrinkled, weathered, tired, but present. The veterans came first. Men and women in faded uniforms, some walking, some in wheelchairs. Old medals gleamed in the sun. Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm. They weren't there to make a scene. They were there for one of their own. Sam stood near the back of the church-turned assembly hall, dressed in a dark blazer, his field jacket folded neatly over one arm. He didn't speak to many people as they filed in. He didn't need to. Just being there carried its own gravity. Pastor Ellison, voice trembling, with a mix of pride and disbelief, opened the gathering with a prayer that sounded more like a reckoning. "Lord, we are tired of asking for what should have been given," he said. "Tired of proving that our worth is real. Today we don't ask, we stand." Then came the unexpected. The podium was supposed to host community leaders, clergy, maybe a few activists. But when Sam stepped forward without being called, without ceremony, the room held its breath. "I'm not a speaker," he said, steady and unshaken. "I'm a mechanic. I fix things. Engines, pipes, door hinges, things folks leave broken too long." He looked out over the crowd. "But some things you can't fix with a wrench. You fix them with memory, with truth." The camera phones came out not to sensationalize, but to remember. Sam continued, "I didn't ask to be on no camera. Didn't ask to have my name in the papers. I just wanted to make sure that what happened to me didn't happen to the next man." He placed the field jacket over the lectern. "This here isn't just fabric. It's years, sweat, friends I buried, towns I never saw again. And when those deputies put me on the ground, they weren't just disrespecting me. They were stepping on every man who ever wore one of these and came home." He paused and still wasn't seen. The silence was so heavy you could hear a baby fussing 2 pews back. We tell our young folks to stay calm, do what they're told, show respect. But what happens when you do all that and still end up face down on hot concrete? What lesson are we passing down then? He pointed to the crowd, gently, not accusing. "That's not on them. That's on us." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the pews. "They say what happened to me was a mistake, that the system isn't broken, just had a bad day. But I've been here long enough to know the truth. This system was built this way, and until we rebuild it, we'll keep having days like that." He finished with a whisper that carried louder than any shout. "I don't want your sympathy. I want your voice. Use it before someone else has to use a phone to film your silence." When he stepped down, people didn't cheer. They stood, in rows, quiet, reverent, changed. That night, the speech aired in full on several networks. No edits, no dramatic overlays. Just a man in a blazer holding his own truth like a lantern in the dark. And as the video circled the country, it began changing things. The Carver Town Council, long dismissed as ceremonial, held an emergency session. Body cameras were ordered for every officer in the department. Funding was approved not for more cruisers, but for civilian oversight. The mayor, a former prosecutor, called it a turning point we didn't ask for, but can't ignore. But perhaps the most powerful shift wasn't in policy, it was in perception. Briggs, the young deputy, requested a private meeting with Sam through the DOJ. It was granted. They met at a small diner on the edge of town, no press, no agents. Just two men and a coffee pot that never emptied. Briggs spoke first. "I didn't know who you were. I didn't think I needed to." Sam didn't offer forgiveness. He offered clarity. Respect ain't about knowing who someone is. It's about treating them like they matter anyway. Briggs left the booth with tears in his eyes and a folder under his arm, the same one Sam had used to collect notes for the DOJ. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Doyle had his day in court. Charges were filed: civil rights violations, use of excessive force misconduct. The courtroom was tense but quiet, and when the footage was played for the jury, no one looked away. Doyle's defense team tried to argue stress miscommunication training gaps, but none of that explained the sneer on his face as he pressed Sam to the ground. None of that erased the phrase caught on dashcam audio. "You think that jacket makes you better?" It didn't take long. The verdict guilty, the sentence pending. But Sam didn't show up for the verdict. He didn't need to. Justice had already arrived at his door, quiet and uninvited, in the form of a letter from the U.S. Attorney General. The letter was hand-delivered by DOJ Rep. Curtis McNeil, who met Sam on his porch just after dusk. "This is more than a thank you," Curtis said, handing over a framed document. "It's acknowledgement from the highest office we have." Sam read it slowly, twice, then folded it carefully and handed it back. "Keep it," he said. "I got what I needed." Curtis paused, which was a world that listened at least once. Back in town, the changes kept rolling. High school students hosted town halls. Church groups started recording traffic stop stories from elderly members. Even the local police academy began inviting veterans to speak on community relations. And at the heart of it all was one man who'd asked for nothing and left everything better than he found it. The ceremony at the state capitol was intentionally small. No press, no stage, no live broadcast. Just a circle of chairs in a quiet room surrounded by marble walls and heavy curtains that softened the echo of footsteps. Sam Hargrove stood out among the suits not because he tried to, but because he was the only one not trying to look important. He wore a navy blue shirt, his field jacket draped across his forearm, like always. Not a trophy, not a costume. Just a part of who he was. Attorney General Lorraine Keegan extended her hand with both of hers. "Mr. Hargrove," she said with genuine gravity, "we don't often get the opportunity to meet someone who changes the way a system works without shouting, without suing, and without quitting." Sam nodded. "That's because most folks who try don't live long enough to see it change." She led him to the front where a single glass display case had been prepared. Inside it, a facsimile of his notebook, the one he'd used to log patrol routes and badge numbers in neat block handwriting. It wasn't evidence anymore. It was legacy. "We've digitized every page," Keegan said, "and we'll be training new agents on how to recognize quiet patterns of abuse thanks to this." Sam looked at the notebook. "Funny," he muttered, "I used to carry it in my coat like it was no big thing." She turned to him. "It was a big thing. It's still a big thing." He didn't stay long. He never liked attention. He thanked the room, shook a few hands, and caught a ride back with Agent Chavez and Curtis from the DOJ. In the back seat, he looked out the window at fields blurring past. "Funny," he said quietly. "I used to think no one ever paid attention unless you raised hell." Chavez looked at him in the rearview mirror. "You didn't raise hell, Sam. You raised hope." Back in Carver, life didn't suddenly flip to perfect, but it tilted. Sheriff Lasky resigned. The town council moved forward with their vote to install a civilian-led accountability board. They started reviewing every arrest made in the last 18 months involving Doyle's squad. Charges were dropped in several of them. Formal apologies were issued. Some came with settlements. Others came with tears. Paula Jenkins, the respiratory therapist who filmed it all, was offered a position on the new board. She accepted but kept working nights at the hospital. "People still need breath," she said, "and some need it more than ever." Sam didn't attend every meeting, but he was there when it counted. When they voted on the body camera policy, when they finalized the new community training curriculum for rookie officers, when they honored the veterans in a ceremony that for the first time included black soldiers on the program cover. One evening, Sam sat alone in the park near the elementary school, a place he'd avoided since his wife passed. But now he came to sit in silence to watch. A group of kids tossed a football. One fell and laughed. Another shouted, "Go long," with the kind of joy Sam hadn't heard in a while. "Mr. Hargrove," a soft voice called. He turned. A woman in her 30s approached holding the hand of a little boy in a Spider-Man hoodie. "This is my son Caleb," she said. "He wanted to meet you." Sam tilted his head, unsure. "He saw your speech on my phone," she continued, "and he asked me if you were a superhero." Sam chuckled, a rare thing. "Nah, just an old man who got tired of pretending." Caleb looked up. "You got thrown on the ground." Sam nodded slowly. "I did, but you got back up." "That's right." The boy grinned. "That's what heroes do." Sam knelt slowly, his knees creaking like old floorboards. "You remember something for me," he said. "The world don't get better by accident. It gets better because folks like you decide to make it that way." Caleb beamed. His mother placed a hand on Sam's shoulder. "Thank you," she said. Sam rose, waved, and returned to the bench as they walked away. That night, as crickets chirped and porch lights blinked on across Carver, Sam folded his field jacket for the last time that week and laid it over the back of a kitchen chair. He poured a cup of coffee and sat by the window. Outside, things looked the same trees, same gravel road, same porch swing. But inside, something had shifted. Not just in him, in all of them. Maybe change didn't roar like thunder. Maybe it whispered through a courtroom, a church pew, or a child's voice in the park. Maybe justice didn't always shout. Sometimes it simply stood up and stayed standing. Sometimes the loudest moments in life don't come from raised voices or broken glass, but from stillness, from dignity, from a man who refuses to stay silent not for applause, but for the ones who come next. Samuel Hargrove never asked to be famous. He never asked for his story to be shared on national TV or printed in a newspaper. All he asked for was respect, a simple word, but one that too often feels out of reach for people who've already given this country everything they had. And maybe that's what we need to hold on to. That justice isn't just about the verdicts or the headlines. It's about the quiet choices we make every day, to speak up, to film, to vote, to remember. Because if we don't remember, these stories just become moments that pass and nothing changes. So tonight, if you're listening, I want you to take a moment to think about your own community, about the people who live quietly, the veterans on your block, the elders at the diner, the kids biking through your street who may one day need someone to believe their truth. Because the next Samuel Hargrove won't wear a cape. He'll wear a jacket. He'll drive an old car. And he'll walk into your story when you least expect it. And when that happens, will you be the one who stays silent, or will you be the one who stands? Let's not wait until it's trending. Let's make justice the norm, not the exception. Thanks for spending time with me today.